And Afghanistan faces an uncertain future after the U.S. withdrawal and Taliban takeover last month. At the 2021 Intelligence and National Security Summit earlier this week, Deputy CIA Director David Cohen said that there are, quote, indications that al-Qaeda might be moving back into Afghanistan now. So to talk more about this, I want to bring in our intelligence and national security reporter, Olivia Gazis, who moderated that discussion. Olivia, so glad that you are here this morning. So from what I have been reading, some of the predictions are that al-Qaeda could reconstitute itself in Afghanistan within 1 to 2 years. I'm curious about the intelligence. How did officials come to this conclusion?
Sure. Well, you put your finger right on it, Anne-Marie. What two top intelligence officials told us this week was that unless it's disrupted, al-Qaeda could reconstitute and carry out attacks that reach U.S. soil in 1 to 2 years. The director of the Defense Intelligence Agency even said that was a conservative estimate, meaning it could be even sooner than that they pose a threat. When we then asked the CIA deputy director to weigh in, he said he agreed. And as you said, there are already indications that al-Qaeda is moving into the country. He said it was early days and that the agency was going to closely monitor that, keep a very close eye on it. But it's obviously a very troubling development and a big red flag for our engagement with the Taliban nonetheless. And it's one of the indications that, al-Qaeda is not only intent on reconstituting, it's pretty much rushing in to do so.
So you said that they're going to be monitoring. We've heard an awful lot about over-the-horizon techniques, which I sort of see. I understand over-the-horizon when we're talking about maybe a strike, some sort of military maneuver. But how do you do over-the-horizon intel? How are they going to monitor?
That's a central question, and you posed it. Yeah, it's been top of mind for a lot of people, including lawmakers, who've said that they haven't really heard a strategy articulated by this administration as to how those over-the-horizon, as you said, drone surveillance, drone strikes capabilities are supposed to work absent a human network to ensure that we're, again, able to detect and disrupt these threats before they happen. What both the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency and the CIA deputy director said was that they're working now to regain access to Afghanistan via a variety of sources. And that's going to mean communications intercepts, overhead surveillance, and either maintaining or trying to rebuild a network of human spies to get information. The deputy director of the CIA said collection would primarily be over the horizon, meaning overhead, but he's also going to look, or the agency is also going to look for ways to work within the horizon to the extent it's possible. So that could mean retaining some of the assets that we had already developed in Afghanistan. It could mean trying to somehow recruit new ones. It could mean detasking and reassigning other human sources that we have in the region. Or it could mean using other countries' operatives to pass along information who we trust. All of those things pose challenges. But what the CIA said that this is not a new challenge for it. It has operated in countries where it's been denied physical access before. The key question, of course, is developing any kind of human network takes time. It takes time to gain these people's trust. It takes time to learn to trust these people. So, the question of whether we're going to be able to penetrate and keep eyes on what's happening in Afghanistan sooner than these groups can reconstitute and, again, regain capability is a big one.
So, the first Taliban government was formed after the group was victorious in Afghanistan's civil war in the mid-90s, and al-Qaeda was hosted by the Taliban. This Taliban says that, they are not working with al-Qaeda, they're not friends of al-Qaeda. If the fear now is perhaps civil war and the reconstitution of terror groups like al-Qaeda, I guess I'm trying to get at what is a better situation for al-Qaeda? Is it better for them to have Afghanistan descend into some sort of civil war, and in that chaos they can then re-enter the country and reconstitute themselves? Because this Taliban says that they will not be helping al-Qaeda.
Yes, you're absolutely right. That is what, in theory and on paper, this Taliban has said. They did commit in February 2020 not to allow any terror groups to operate from Afghan soil. However, in practice and in reality, we know that these close ties between the Taliban and al-Qaeda operatives have persisted. They have long had ideological affinities with one another. They've lived, they've fought, they've trained alongside one another. Their families have intermarried. The UN has even said that the Taliban consulted with al-Qaeda during its negotiations with the United States. So there's a huge, overwhelming degree of skepticism that al-Qaeda won't be offered safe haven by the Taliban. And again, indications that that is already happening, which is concerning because safe haven is perhaps the most important factor in whether a network is able to regain potency and an attack capability. That's why this is so concerning.
And just out of curiosity, if there was to be a civil war in Afghanistan, it's very sort of difficult to know how stable this country is going to be moving forward. Who would be the two sides? I wonder sometimes if we may actually see a break within the Taliban, because sometimes it seems like the Taliban in Kabul putting together a government, that there's a gap between those people and then the Taliban in the rest of the country, particularly the more rural areas of the country.
Absolutely. There are tensions and splinters within Taliban factions itself. And, it's not entirely, there won't be two sides in this conflict, which is a very real scenario that happens in this country. Afghanistan is unfortunately a country with decades of war and bloodshed behind it. There are so many groups right now who are competing for both territory and influence, among them groups like ISIS-K, who we know are sworn enemies of the Taliban and would like nothing more than to see them fail spectacularly to govern the country. There's also already bloody fighting in an area of the country called the Panjshir Valley in the north, where there's a group called the National Resistance Front of Afghanistan, and it's vowing to fight and even appealing to political leaders here in the United States to help it do so. That's a group now led by a man called Ahmad Massoud, who is the son of a legendary commander who successfully defeated the Taliban and Soviet forces decades ago. And he and his supporters are insisting that he's the rightful leader of Afghanistan and, again, making appeals for legitimacy and support from the United States. So it is far from certain that the Taliban, even if they've seized power right now, are going to be able to maintain it over the medium or long term.
All right, Olivia, thank you so much.
Thanks, Anne-Marie.